What's up, y'all? I'm Kiana.
I'm Calvin.
And this is Christ Culture, the podcast. Today, we are joined by the lovely Ebony Taylor. Yes, y'all, she is a woman of God, a business owner, and we have a really great conversation today.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about finding your identity through God,
maintaining your identity within a community,
and the journey of finding self.
Yes, y'all. It's a good one.
Stay tuned.
What's up, Ebony?
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. What's up, Cal?
Chilling.
Like
a villain.
like a villain?
I don't know. I heard somebody say that before.
Villains out here? Okay.
Yeah. Should we let Ebony plug her business to start off with?
Oh, wow.
Who are
Right
you?
to
What's
it.
Loveway?
Hi there. My name is Ebony Taylor. I'm the CEO and founder of Loveway. It's a Christian lifestyle and apparel brand. And basically what I do is I curate events for communities to bring people together, to grow closer together in Christ. I also utilize my skills of love, style, and faith to also do events for clients.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you're wearing your own merch today, right?
I am.
Hey.
Yes. Head, heels, and standards high.
I love that. And where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at It's the Loveway. That's ITS. People always think like I'm just saying Loveway, but at It's the Loveway. And then also on the website, it's www.itstheloveway.com.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So what got you into starting a business? How'd that happen?
Ooh, how did that happen? Honestly, I felt like it was a calling that God had for me for a long time that I kept running from. And I ended up losing my job. So that it kind of pushed me into it. So I lost my job in kind of a traumatic way, but I used that as fuel for what God had me purposed to do. And I just branched out and started the business.
Hey, it's nothing like it though. When you have a plot twist like that.
Yeah. It was kind of like, I felt like it was like God said, okay, since you won't move, I'm going to move you. I got that when I got that job, I felt like it was given to me by God, obviously. All things are. But I felt like it was a position that I didn't even know existed, in an industry that I didn't even know existed. And by other people's standards, I would not have been qualified for the job. But God qualifies us, not other people.
Hey.
So I just, would say, I'm not leaving this job unless God tells me to leave. Because this is a gift from God. I love my job. I thought I'd never be able to say that. And I really loved it. And then it just, COVID happened. It was in healthcare. So, the industry started to change a lot. There was a lot of dynamics and things happening at work that were changing as well. And so I ended up losing my job, and I just walked out, and, other people were crying. They're like, this is so unfair. How can they let her go? Blah, blah. And I was just like, God got me. I'm good.
Wow.
So this is more of a ministry than a business, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So through my apparel, I tell my testimony. So that's one of the things that I love so much about my merch. Head, heels, and standards high. That's like just part of my identity. Like, keeping your strength through all things, and really just something that God placed on my heart. So. And if you really pay attention to the merch and you look at the descriptions, a lot of them actually has a story.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, Key. So I think something that I'm noticing is you can tell a lot about our guests by what topic they choose.
Yeah.
So we give our guests this long list of topics, and we're like, which one do you kind of want to talk about? And I'm starting to find out that you can find out about their personality based on what they choose. So you were talking about you do events and stuff, and you chose the topic of community versus individuality,
Yes.
which is right on cue with what you're just talking about.
Yeah.
So talk to us about like the impact. Let's start with the community side of it. Like, how does your business and your ministry impact the community directly?
Well, I think that it's when you're trying to step out in faith, it's difficult to find your community. And so what I try to do is create a safe space for people to come together with like-minded individuals, but we welcome people wherever they are in their walk of faith. So from the community side, I always like pride myself on creating a safe environment for people to come to talk about whatever they have going on. We may have a topic of discussion for our curated events, but from the community side, that's pretty much what we do.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing, and I'm thinking about, there's not a lot of spaces for believers to come together and have
Yeah.
community,
Yeah.
safe spaces like that.
Yeah.
You know, where it doesn't always have to be church.
Yeah.
Like, we don't always have to meet at Tuesday for Bible study at church. Like, we can actually go out, hang out, and do things like normal people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Key, I know you just did something kind of a community networking situation. How'd that go?
It was actually really cool. So kind of like you, just putting on like events so people can like come together.
Yeah.
But this was my first one, and I did this through my company, Keygenics. But I felt like, okay, for a creative aspect in the DMV, I wanted to find these people. And so I hosted a creative event for people who are in creative, like directing, videography, photography, web design, anything like that. And then also like I love movement, which is dance and fitness. So kind of merging those two worlds, but brought those people together. And it was really cool because when I think this kind of goes in with our conversation of like individuality and community, right?
Yeah.
You know who you are. And I want to actually have you speak on that part.
Okay.
Right. But, you know who you are, and then you kind of want you want to find people with like minds, right? So you almost put this thing out like a Batman symbol, right? And you're like, okay, where's all these people? And you put yourself out there, and then God does the rest, where he brings the people that not just you needed, but they also needed that community as well. So for me, I was like, all right, there's probably only gonna be like 5 people there, and 2 people my brother and then my sister and like my best friend. But we actually had like 16 people come out, which was
Dope.
almost overwhelming for me because I was like, wow, I wasn't really expecting this many people, but it was so cool because I could see the fruit of their interactions and how it paid off for them, because they're like, wow, I see all these other people that I would never have connected with otherwise. So kind of going back to what I was saying with that individuality, you know, you lost your job as a plot twist, and it forced you to kind of step out on faith. What was that process like for you in your relationship with God, coming out of a traumatic loss, right? But how did your perspective shift to be like, I want to start a business now? Like, where were you in that place?
I was really in a place of like obedience. Like that's where my perspective was, because of the fact that that wasn't the first like traumatic experience that I had. And so it was kind of like I was shifting to something else, and I was using that strength and looking back at how God had already brought me forward and brought me into this. And I was like, if I knew God did that back there, like I'm not about to stress right now. I already know God has me. So there's no need for me to cry. There's no need for me to stress. Really, I just need to hone in and be obedient. So whatever God tells me to do, whatever he wants me to name this business, whatever he wants me to do with this business, I'm going to take it to him first and allow him to guide me. So I had a lot of family and friends that were kind of like rushing me, like, Ebony, you need to hurry up. Like they're concerned about like income and this, that, and third. I'm like, I'm not concerned about that, because I know that God has me. So I just need to slow down, process my thoughts, and really take it to God, so that I know at the end of the day, I'm doing exactly what it is that God has me to do. So I won't have to worry.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to have to look to put God in my business, because God was already there.
That's the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you, in that moment, because I know I have a similar like story in that sense, but like you having a faith like you do, where you're like, I'm trusting God. It might look crazy to y'all. Like, did you feel crazy at any point, or were you like, no matter who came to you, were you feeling a calm?
You know, I want to be.
We can be raw.
Let me try and be honest. I'm like, what's that? You know, I think this time I don't think anybody else's opinion really affected me this time around.
Yeah.
Like, I think in my past experience, I learned that sometimes you have to get with God by yourself, and you have to talk and discuss it out with God first before you start letting everybody else know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because once everyone else gets their thoughts and their minds on it, then it's like you're focusing on their opinions and not what it is that God has you to do. So I think this time around, I was really focused on, this is what God told me to do, and this is what I'm doing. You either rocking with me or you're not.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like something that I wanted to touch on when you were talking about like your family was rushing you.
Yeah.
And the fact that like the word community has a positive vibe to it, right? Positive connotation, but it's not always positive.
Right.
And it's not to say that the community or your family or those people are bad per se.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to exclude them from certain aspects of your life and work on it strictly as an individual.
Yeah.
So what was that like just dealing with your family and those people who were very close to you during that time, like, how do you navigate that, telling them like, hey, this is something that I've got to deal with me and God, and I love you, but I got to push you away for a second?
I think the beautiful thing in that is that my family got to see my process before. So if I told them, they kind of trusted it. Their worry and their concern was more about my well-being. Like, they wanted to make sure that my lights were still going to be on. I was still going to have a roof over my head and food in my stomach.
Of course,
You know what I mean?
Of course.
So that is not in a bad, it wasn't really bad. But it wasn't really bad. They were just looking to really support me in that aspect. So I wouldn't say, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought.
No,
losing my train of thought. I wouldn't say it was really bad. I would just say for me, my family kind of listens to me now, especially when it comes to my relationship with God. They kind of know, like, if Ebony is saying, you know, this is what God told her, we're going to rock with that. So they were supportive, but still kind of worried. Once I told them, like, just stop worrying. God has it under control. Y'all know I'm a chronic saver. So just you know, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't know that I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we have to like be okay with, because when we work so hard to find our community, sometimes we get stuck in it and feel like we don't want to make certain decisions because it might mess that community up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like you said, you have to have those times in your life where you can discern, yes, I have my community. Yes, I've worked to build this community. Yes, I love them. But right now, for me, this is what I need to do. And I think that's something that I was struggling with, kind of the other side of it, though. I was by myself and I didn't want to let the community in. But now I'm seeing that it can go both ways. Sometimes you can have that community and you need to take a step back from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's where that balance comes in too. Because when you're talking about your community, typically these are the people that know you best. These are the people that you trust, you know, so their opinions do matter in a way. But I think that's where that balance comes in, where it's individuality versus community, because you want to have that balance between, okay, but I need to take this to God and this needs to be our moment. And like, I'm hearing you, I hear your concerns, but like, I'm balancing between both of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I hear you like say, you guys are talking a lot about your family being community. For me, like, I left to go to college when I was 18. So I have not been back home like for a long extended amount of time since I was 18 years old. So my community is more so like my friends and like the people that I have surrounding me here. Like my family does not live here with me. So while my family is always going to be my community because they are my family.
Of course, yeah.
Like, I wouldn't necessarily say that my family actually knows me best.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So even my extended family, like when I go home, they know 18-year-old Ebony. They don't know the Ebony that I am now. So sometimes it's kind of difficult to navigate that as well, because I'm not the person that you used to know.
That's
you know,
true.
and I have grown so much over the past, I don't know, like 7 years, you know, in my relationship with God. So I'm even different than when I was coming home from college and visiting, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something very relatable. And I think we may have talked about that before. Kind of the same situation. I had to deal with my father. He was like, I'm going to spoil you up until you turn 18. But the day you turn 18 and graduate high school, deuces. And he was not joking. The day I graduated high school, he was like, where you going? Like, he's like, you can go play chess, shoot marbles, but you can't stay here. And I decided I wanted to go to the community college, but I still had to leave home and go figure out where I was going to live, where I was going to stay, where I was going to do. And much like you were saying, like, all my family's in Michigan.
Yeah.
So, and I actually left Michigan when I was like 11. So they remember locale. So they haven't been with me. They haven't been able to watch me grow up. And so, yeah, I had to develop, much like you, a different type of community.
Yeah.
And a big part of that was friends, but it was only a few handful of friends. Like, I didn't want to always let people into my life. I mean, that's changing now. But yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Just having people look at you differently as an individual, because they remember you on a certain stage, a certain period of your life, and that's who you are to them.
Yeah.
And I think what we were talking about was the fact that, like, a big part of my community got to know me through the podcast. They start watching the episodes of the podcast, and that's how they learned about me. And, you know, they didn't know me since I was 11 years old. So So yeah.
And that's on being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Props to you for being vulnerable, Cal.
Yeah. I think the weirdest thing is like, especially that family part, like you're saying, like you were talking about how your family doesn't actually know you best.
Yeah.
That's like real. Cause like a lot of the stuff I'll say on here and then I'll talk to my mom and my dad and they're like, when did this happen? Like, what was it? I was like, I forget that you're not here. Like, you don't just know this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's real.
Okay.
That's real.
See, I'm very close with my family, so like I always have this running joke with them where I'm like, you don't know my life, but like they obviously know me like the closest. But I just say that just because they be knowing me, and I'm like, don't hit that chord. You don't know my life. But as far as community, especially in a friend sense, right? Like even my friends that I grew up with since we were kids, like we're still best friends now, and there's like 4 of us. But even in the past like 4 years, we're all living in different states. We don't know specifically this everyday version, right? So can you guys talk about your communities with your friends? Because we as individuals, we do evolve as we get older and as we learn new information and stuff like that. But can you speak on the friends groups that you have now and what area of your life that they kind of compartmentalize into?
Yeah. I would say the weird thing about my situation is I'm still friends with the people I was friends with like early high school, like since freshman year. And I think most of that came because I was already a very introverted person. So I like hand selected friends. So they were close and they're still close. So like he'll tell you we have our one friend group. We're all still close with them. Still have my other friend group, still close with them. And
Do they know each other?
they know
They
each other,
intertwine
but,
with
but
each
they're
other? They're
two different
different.
groups.
Very okay.
Yeah. But it's a whole situation. But like I'm still friends with all of them. But like the compartmentalized that you were talking about, one side of them I would say is more into the faith base, the other one's not. And I thought like that would interrupt the friendship. Like when I first got heavy into my faith, I was okay with it because I was going to follow Jesus one way or the other, but I was like, this is going to mess up my friendships. And it didn't. And even the ones who are the furthest away from faith still respect my faith.
That's good.
And I'm still able to go hang out with them, do whatever. They don't look at me any different. They don't say anything. So that was very surprising to me. But I think it's like something very important for people to know. You can stand firm on your faith and who you are in whatever aspect and still maintain those friendships.
Absolutely.
And if you can't maintain those friendships because they look at you differently or they treat you differently, that says something about them, not you.
Yeah. For me, I would say I have a few friends that I've been friends with for 25 years. So like it's a handful of us, but a lot of my friends, I met them over the course of the last, I don't know, I'd say probably like 6 or 7 years now. So around the time that I got baptized, kind of the year before that, I realized that my community wasn't as big as I thought it was. My community prior to that was based on a relationship that I had previously. So all of my friends were like the spouses or girlfriends or whatever of, their friends or their spouse or whatever. And so like when I got out of that relationship, I'm like, here I am and I'm by myself. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, I don't have any friends around here, And it was already difficult to make friends because of the industry that I was working in. And I was a manager, so I just was really never off. And so when I finally took time to sit down and like ask God, like, who am I? Like, and really try to find my own identity. I asked God to bring people into my life. I didn't want to choose the people.
Yeah.
I wanted them to be God ordained.
Yeah.
And so my community now, I say this all the time. No one in my life is someone that I picked for myself. It's all people that God placed in my life. And they all have a significant reason and time frame as to why God put them there. So that's a lot of my friends now. And a lot of them I've met through church, or I've met through someone at church, or I've met people at Loveway events that have found me on Instagram and have invited someone, and now I'm connected with that person as well. So I think building a community is so important, but I think one of the main things that people forget to do is to consult God. Like,
Yes.
I asked God for discernment, like, and he gave it to me. I knew, okay, like, this is someone I need to keep at arm's length, or this is someone that I can, really build a relationship with. And I think I'm blessed in a sense that a lot of my friends have either helped me grow in my faith. They will tell you differently, but I say they helped me too like, grow in my faith. But it's a blessing to be a blessing to others. And that's something that God has done for me, and how I've been able to attract people into my life.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. You got something?
Yeah, I was gonna touch on you asking God who you are,
Oh, yeah.
because that is a really big thing.
Yeah.
Especially like, I don't know if there's a specific order to go into it, but I feel like definitely find yourself first
Yes.
through God's eyes, and then start to seek out your community, because kind of if you go backwards, yeah, you're not going to really have that discernment to be like, okay, that's kind of a snake, or like this person I can actually trust to be close to me, you know? Is that kind of where you were going?
So yeah.
Ish?
Kinda.
Okay.
I wanted to add on to that before you move along, but like also like finding yourself at first is important, because how do you keep yourself from conforming to the world if you don't know who you are?
Exactly.
You know?
See, that's exactly where I was going with that. I was going to say, let's talk about assimilation. Like, how do you maintain your individuality in the midst of a community after
absolutely.
you join?
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to start acting like the people you're around.
Okay.
Very, very easy to do that.
That's
Yeah.
psychologically a real thing though too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just like,
because-
oh, like my pride, like I don't conform to anybody else. It's like, no, psychologically,
Yeah.
you become the type of people that you hang out with.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've all heard that quote, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
I think that goes into one of the other things I wanted to talk to seamlessly. One of the other points I wanted to speak to seamlessly, and that's about learned behaviors. So when I went to God to ask who I am, one of the things that God revealed to me is a lot of who I am was based on learned behaviors. It wasn't who I actually was or how I actually felt. It was all based on things that I had seen, whether it was through my family or different environments that I had been in the community that I had previously. And so it took some time for me to like really sit and figure out who I am and whose I am. And through prayer and through really like asking God of the characteristics that I wanted to see within myself, and also the spiritual, not gifts, the fruit of the spirit, like all the different fruits of the spirit that I wanted to see within myself. Like through that, I was able to really figure out who it is that I am. And I stand firm on that. Like one of my really good girlfriends, I actually had the pleasure of seeing my nephew like be dedicated this morning at church.
Aww.
But her and her husband always say to me, they're like, you know, one of the things that we love about you, Ebony, is that you know who you are. You stand by that. And I do. Like if it doesn't like line up with who it is that God has told me that I am, and it doesn't line up with who God requires me to be, you'll have a hard time trying to tell me who I am. Like, it'll be very hard for anyone to do that. I have a community that doesn't just include friends, but also includes a therapist and wise counsel.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love that.
I want to go back for a second to something you spoke on, and that was the learned behaviors part of that. Because I think one thing we should mention to people is that finding yourself as an individual is a journey.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you examine yourself and you find yourself acting out those learned behaviors. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
All of us do it to some degree.
We're human.
Like, you watch your grandma cook something a certain way, that's how you're going to cook it for the rest of your life, even if they tell you differently. So it's okay for you to, I find myself doing that a lot, especially as I get older. I'll scare myself because I'll do something. I'll be like, Lord have mercy, I look like my dad or I sound like my dad.
Yeah.
And it's just because that's how I saw it done my entire life. So like a lot of what we're talking about is you have to get yourself to the point to where you first want to, and then you have to go on that journey of discovering who you are.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing if you find yourself acting out those learned behaviors.
Yeah. And I think that goes to understand, like, before we can even find ourselves, we need to understand how God sees us, you know? Because, yeah, it's those things where you're talking about the fruit of the spirit, right? Where this was something I was working through too, where I'm like, okay, I want to be all these things. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a good sibling. I want to be a good friend. I want to be successful and like all these other things. But at the essence of it, it's like I could still have all these things and not have the character.
Yeah.
So I think with that prayer comes, okay, let me seek out the fruit first. Let me seek out the kingdom. Let me seek out what makes God happy, what pleases him and what glorifies him.
Absolutely.
Seek out his righteousness, and then everything else comes into play. And I'm not even talking like superficial things. I'm talking like things that are glorifying in the spirit, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk about that process? Because I know you said that you kind of were a little bit more at peace this second time around, or this time again. You weren't really starting from scratch.
Yeah.
But can we reverse all the way back to like the first time when you're like, I don't even know if it's God that I need to go to. I need to go to something else, or whatever that experience was for you. That wasn't so easy the first time.
Oh, I knew it was God immediately. To the point where I got in my car and I drove to the grocery store and I was like, I need to pick up a devotional book because I need God. And it wasn't just like going to the Bible. I was like, I need a specific word. I need a specific book. I need something to help me right in this moment. So I immediately turned to God. I knew it was God that I needed. And that was the only thing that was going to get me through what I was going through. And the process was, oh my gosh, the process was long. It was hard. I cried a lot. I cried. So my friend that I've known since 10th grade, she would tell you like, that's the most she cried the most that year than I've ever seen her cry in her entire life. And I've known her as a kid. It was terrible. But I knew that the only way that I was going to get through that process was with the help of God.
Yeah.
And through that, I sat and I started to examine myself, and I really wanted God to cleanse me of the things that were not of him. And I knew that I didn't want to become a bitter person. I wanted to become a better person. Yeah. And so all of my prayers were very focused on that. Like, God, help me to be better, help me to identify the things within myself that are not of you, help me to not conform to this world, help me to be a light to others and use what I'm going through, to inspire other people and to help other people get through what it is they're going through. I struggled a lot. I got mad at God, like, why is this happening to me? And then I finally, it took months and months and months, but I finally, in that process, I started to seek out community of faith. And I started going to one church. If you go to my Instagram, you'll see the story. There's a video that tells the crazy story of how I started going to this one church, and then I had to leave and go to another one, which is my home church now that I still go to. And through that process of finding a community of faith, it helped me to get through what I was going through. But it took first for me to say, like, I need God, number one. And number two, what are the other ways that I can seek out God? Going and being around a family of faith, and then really allowing those people to be my family. Like, I would be sitting in the pew just bawling my eyes out. Don't know anybody. I'm just here because I need a word. And I'm like sitting there bawling my eyes out, and someone will come and sit on the pew and hug me or, ask me, could they walk with me, talk with me, and so that's why, like, a community of faith is just like so important. The process was, but to go back to your question, the process was difficult. It was long, but through that process, God was using me to be a light for others while he was allowing others to come into my life to be a light for me. And because of that, I was able to see a way out of what it was that I was going through. And I was able to see that way out was God, that God was walking with me the whole time, guiding me out of this place of despair. And ironically, it was the worst time in my life, but it was also the best time in my life because my relationship with God strengthened so much, and I gained so much wisdom about who I am in God, how God loves me, and I learned how to love other people the way God loves me.
Yeah.
There's so many things in that.
Yeah.
There's so many things in that.
I have a question for both of you, but I just want to touch on like something that you said, like that was ironically the best time in your life. Yeah, like I can think back to what's considered the worst period of my life, but like some days I wake up and I almost wish it would happen again because I remember the level of faith I had in those days. I remember what it took for me to get out the bed those days. And I know how hard I was leaning on God during that time. And sometimes I would almost feel bad nowadays because I'm like, am I not doing that? Like, is my relationship waning because of that? So yeah, I feel that. But to go back to my question before I forget it, we're talking a lot about finding out how God feels about you, basically, before you start going on that journey. I want to talk about, I want to ask both of you this question. I want you to contrast how you thought about yourself, the types of things you said to yourself, how you felt about who you were, that precise moment where he told you who you were to him, and what was the contrast between those two things.
I think that's a perfect word, because it was a contrast for me. Because I was at a place where the way that I saw myself reflected outwardly in my relationships, in the way that I dressed, in the way that I spoke to myself. And maybe not so much that it looked bad from the outside, because I was so good at making it look easy and like everything was okay. But for me, knowing myself now and the way that God sees me, I look back and I'm like, ooh, baby girl, baby, you were really hurting. Like, you was really hurting. And for me, it was like, back in that time, I would look at myself and literally do the opposite of affirm myself. I'd be like, wow, you're so dumb. Like, why are you still in this position? Why are you still doing this to yourself, even though you know it's bad? Like, why do you even try? Like, what is the point even? You know, like, nobody sees you that, like, in the way that you're trying to see yourself. Like, why are you even trying? Like, I would literally talk to myself like that. And it would literally just, I would choose people in my life that they wouldn't talk to me like that, but they wouldn't treat me the way that I should be respected, you know? Yeah. But once it came to the point where, like, I'm like saying that same prayer, like, God, show me who I am. Like, show me who you have for me. Like, show me the things that you want for me. And I was literally like, it took a lot of repetition for me to understand, okay, God, I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see it. Not even that, but I had to go through a moment of isolation, a season of separation. Yeah. Luckily enough, I was able to do it with my family. Like, they took me into their house, and I wasn't like, because if I was by myself, if I was in a real season of isolation, I don't know where that would end up. But I think in that season of isolation, I really understood, okay, God, I'm going to lean on you this time. Because last time I tried this, like, it was real ugly and I was real lost. And because of me being so lost, I was taking it on other people too. You know, so it's like, I'm going to take this moment that you have and, like, really get to know what you're trying to tell me, really try to understand you, really be deep into the word. And when he's telling me these things, who I am, I'm starting to see it in my reflection, where I'm like, wow, you are beautiful. You are peaceful. You are at grace. Like, you are all these things. And the thing that I have promised for you is way bigger than you can even imagine. Yeah. So I need you to just trust that. I need you to let go of all these fears and these insecurities and these doubts, and just trust that you're my daughter. And so the way that I started to see myself was, oh, I am an heir of God and his kingdom. I'm a Jesus princess. I am a royal daughter on a throne, you know? And so when I started to see it that way, it wasn't as a place of, like, pride. It was more so, I know my worth. Yeah. You know, and so that started to reflect differently, the way that I speak, the things that I'm taking in, you know. So yeah, it was definitely a contrast, but me being stubborn, he's like, okay, I'm going to keep telling you who you are until you believe it, you know. So yeah, there's a moment of friction, but we're still working through it.
So many things I can relate to in that,
you know,
so many things. But when you asked the question, the first thing that came to my mind was, you know, for me, I allowed other people to define me. And that is what helped me to start living, when I stopped allowing other people to define who I am.
Yeah.
And even to this day, like, sometimes I'll have someone, they can say something as simple as, I remember last year, my sister was like, oh yeah, you're an Aquarius. That makes sense. Like, stuck up and arrogant. And I'm like, wait, what? First of all, I'm not a horoscope person.
Right.
Like, that's not my thing. And second of all, like, that's so rude. And you don't get to define, that's not what God says about me.
That's right.
Like, and you don't get to say that. You don't even know me enough. You're not around me enough to say that that's my personality and my characteristic. Can I be that way in a certain situation? Maybe, you know, but that's not how I see myself. And I don't believe that's how God sees me. So, I think for me, the biggest thing was I had to stop allowing other people to define me because I was internalizing that. I was taking that in and I was believing that that's who I was. And so when I really had to sit down and ask God, like, who am I? I really like, I wanted to share with you guys. I actually have like pillar scriptures for like who I am, you know? And I had to really like go to those scriptures whenever I was getting in my mind about like, oh my gosh, no, I'm this, I'm that, or, you know, I feel like I'm not good enough, or, you know, I'm not smart enough, or whatever the case may be. When I was going through that season, I had to really like go through and pick through the scriptures, and staying in the word helped me a lot. And like carrying scripture throughout the day. So in that season, I was doing 5 devotionals throughout the day. Like when I'm telling you, I was in the word, I was doing 5 devotionals. I was reading books. I was listening to sermons. And it's kind of sort of like you said, Calvin, like sometimes now I feel like, am I doing bad because I'm not doing all of those things? And I wrestled with God with that as well. Like, you know, like feeling like I'm not feeling his presence the same way now that I did back then. And I find myself often praying a prayer of like, God, I really want to feel your presence the way I felt it back then, but I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah,
you
right.
know, I don't want to feel the pain. Can I get that presence without the pain? You know? So, for me, I think there was a contrast, but I think I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like, you know, when people say like, if God could come down and sit down on the bed next to me and say something to me. And that season, I feel like God really came to me and was like, I'm here. Like, tell me what it is that you need from me, and I will make it happen for you. And he did. Yeah. So I think really relying on God for who it was that I saw myself as in that period of time is the only way that I would have gotten through that time. And also a word from my sister, even though my sister, I just said that, you know, my family doesn't know me that well, but but my younger sister, like, she came to visit me during that season. I took about 6 months of isolation by myself before I told my family anything that was happening. And then my sister, she came to visit me, and, you know, I was telling her, you know, some of the things that were happening. And again, there were people that were defining me, and she looked at me and was like, what? She's like, that is not who you are. You do not need to be listening to those people because they are crazy. And that, you know, you just don't listen to that. Like, that's craziness. And so I think having my sister really affirm me and have her be there for me in that season was also, you know, something that really helped me. It's not her telling me like, you are this, you are that. It was more so, I don't know what you are, but it's not that, you know, and that helped a lot as well.
Yeah. I don't want to get too far off topic, but I want to stay on something for a moment because we're all kind of talking about the situations we had to go through to figure out who we were in Christ.
Plot twists.
Those situations, those traumatic situations in your life. And much like we were just saying, when you come out of that, you start almost feeling regretful because you're not still going through those same things that you were.
Yeah, let's go there.
So just for a second, I'm just going to share something that God revealed to me, and hopefully like it'll help somebody else through that time. Especially at the beginning of this year, I started to get so tired. I was just doing way too many things, and I was exhausted all the time. And I started to rest. Y'all all started telling me to take naps. And I started to do that, and I started to feel so bad because I'm like, I should be up doing something. God has told me where he wants me to go in this life. I should be up working at that every second of the day. And I had a conversation with him one day, like, I don't feel good about how things are going now. And I was telling him, I'm like, I felt like I was at war all of last year, and now I feel like I'm stepping back from that and I'm losing the war. And he was like, the purpose of the war wasn't for you to stay in it forever. Mm-hmm. The purpose was to teach you how to war. Mm-hmm. So the next time a war comes up, you know what to do. Yeah. So when you come out of those seasons, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to live there forever, but you know how to go to war when you need to.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. That's real good.
That's good.
I kind of have a similar, it might not be exactly the same, but the same idea. I was actually talking to a couple of my girlfriends about it. And I'm just like, I feel like sometimes we do so much work or whether it's in our faith that we're doing all this work or in other areas of our life, but we feel like maybe it's not really getting where we thought it should be. And maybe even in that season of isolation, it takes longer than you anticipated to, where you're like, okay, I've been here for 6 months, not knowing that you still have another 6 months to go.
Yes.
But can we just talk about when it takes longer than you think it should, when you think it should, not what God said it's going to take. But one verse that I came to was just Isaiah 49. This was when I took like a nature walk and I was like, God, I am going through it right now. I feel like I'm doing all this stuff and it's not making sense. Like, how long is this going to take? Like, blah, 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 right? So he just says Isaiah 49. I'm like, what? Okay. So I go to Isaiah 49 and basically it's talking about, I want to say, maybe it is Isaiah, but he's talking about, God, I feel like I've done all this work in vain and I don't see anything coming from it. I'm not fruitful, but whatever you have for me, I trust you, right? And so God's response is, okay, I've made you to be more than just a servant where you're doing all this faithful work, more than just you bringing people to me, but I'm also going to make you a light for the other nations. Meaning like those other nations aren't just people who are believers. I'm going to make you a light for people who don't even know me. And I'm going to use your story and use your testimony to reach other people that might not even open a Bible. And more so with that, I'm like, wow, that sounds awesome. Like, yeah, I want to be your servant. I want to be that light for other people. But it's still in the back of my mind. I'm like, but how long is it going to take? And so the next verse is literally like, in due time, I'm going to help you. When the time is right, I'm going to come and help you do that. So then that just brings a lot of peace where it's like, okay, no matter how long it takes, I know that God is in control here.
So many things.
I know. I'm like, I don't know. That was an open-ended question, but I just shared my own thing.
So many things. The first thing is like, are you just the whole time situation? Like when you're going through something, you're trying to constantly trying to figure out how long is this going to take?
Yes, I need to know
before I come out of the other side of this. And it's going to take however long it's going to take. There's no really other way to say it. Like you have to go through the full process. You got to let it slow cook as long as it needs to so that it tastes right. If you take it out too early, it's not going to be like it's supposed to be. But the other part of that is just the whole time thing. And like the scripture says, in due time, we have to remember that God's time is not our time.
No.
A day to us is not a day to God. So when we ask him to fix something, he reaches down in time and fixes it. It may not happen at that moment for us, but it's already fixed to him. So we just have to remember that whole time situation when you're going through something, stop trying to figure out how long it's going to take. Because you probably won't like the answer, to be totally honest with you. And that was something I could personally attest to. Like when I was going through that traumatic year that I went through, I was constantly trying to put time frames on God. And we kind of talked about this last week in the episode, but I was just constantly saying like, okay, God, I trust you. And I know in 3 months I'm going to be healed from this. And God's just like, maybe 8 months, like maybe 10 months. And it's just, he knows how long you need to stay in it for whatever needs to happen. So you have to come to a place where you're okay with that and truly surrender to his will and say, if you have me here, I know that it's for a reason and I know that you're going to bring me through it.
Yeah.
And to piggyback off of that, I think the biggest reason why we go through these plot twists and God like pulls us out of these situations that we try to stay in for a little longer is so that we can draw closer to him. Because most of the times, even though we are chasing God in these situations, whether it be like an illness, a job, or a relationship, whatever it is, he tries to pull us into a season where he's like, okay, I see that you're seeking me, but I need your full attention, because it might be some part of the job or the goal that we're kind of idolizing where we feel like, no, I'm glorifying God, right? I'm seeking you. But he's like, okay, but I need to tweak this a little bit and let me actually show you how to really, maybe not show you as in like a resentful way, but he's just like, I really need you to come to me. So I'm going to let you give me the full undivided attention and we're going to sit here. We're going to sit here. Right. Can you agree with that? Like in your moment after you lost your job?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I feel like the crazy thing about that is that, I was actually recruited by another company, by a competitor. And I turned that job down. That was going to pay me $30K more to stay at the company that I was with. to then lose the job 6 months later.
Wow.
And the craziest thing about it is that someone told me that they were going to do that. They worked for a different, it's in healthcare industry is just big, but for another competitor, the girl was like, no, you should take the other job. You should leave, because what they're going to do is keep you for 6 months and then try to find someone else in that time, and then they'll replace you. And I was like, no, I don't think that's going to happen. And what actually made me stay was that there was a salary issue. And so the company had been purchased by another company, and now the bonus structure was different, and so the amount of income that my team was getting is now changing. And so we had been going to the company over and over asking, for them to fix the salary issue. And so the last week I had to give a 30-day notice, and so on the last week they came back and offered me some money to match the other company. And they also gave the entire team a raise. And that's what made me stay, because I thought, well, God used me to get everybody a raise.
There we go.
You know what I mean? And one of my colleagues, she was like, no, she was like, you got to stay. So literally the moment I was walking in the door to go tell them that I was going to leave to go to the other company, I changed my mind, because she came and told me, she's like, no, Ebony, we all got raises today. And I was just like, she's like, God is using you. And I was just like, maybe I should stay. And I didn't want to do the commute. So I was just like, well, if everybody's getting a raise and I'm getting a raise too, I'll just stay, Even though
Did that feel like a sign to you?
It felt like a sign.
Okay.
It felt like a sign, but I also still didn't feel, I didn't have enough time I had to give him an answer right then. So I didn't have enough time to settle in my spirit if I was at peace with the decision that I was making. But I did know that I didn't want to commute. So I didn't want to have to build new accounts from the ground up when I had all this book of business,
Right.
I knew I didn't want to do that. I knew I wanted to stay at a job that's 2 miles from where I live, So I kind of like balanced those things really quickly. And then I was just like, oh, I'm going to stay. Oh, you're going to stay with the toxic manager who's treating you poorly? Like a bad boyfriend? Like, did you not learn your lesson before? So I think from that, like, what I've learned is not to stay in places where I'm not wanted. Like, don't stay in places where you're not wanted. Why? It doesn't matter you have to trust God. And if God is telling you to move, like, God presented a whole nother job to me.
Yeah.
And I still was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to stay. So I would say, yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That did you not learn the lesson already?
Like, did you not learn the lesson already? So it was like when I left, I couldn't even really be mad. I was like, okay, God, I heard you loud and clear.
You're gonna snatch
and
me
you
out
know
of
what?
here. Okay,
And since because that it would have just I want to say it was like that was like March 16th. That happened March 10th or something. The week that the hospital shut down because of COVID. So whether I had left. Whether I had gotten fired or I would have left and gone to the other company, I would have been out of a job either way.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's like, once I realized that, I was like, God, this is what God wanted me to do. So I'm going to walk in this because either way, I would have had I would have had a relief for a week, and then I still would have been out of a job.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. A good God.
Yeah. So many things. The thing that's coming to mind is just sometimes the enemy uses things, it makes them look enticing to get you to go a certain direction.
Always.
And then the next thing that came to mind was just like the scripture that says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good.
That part.
And matter what the enemy does, no matter how bad it looks in that moment, God can take it and make it work for you.
Yeah.
Just like he did with your story, how he took you through that whole journey to get you to where he needed you to be. Even when the enemy throws those things in your face, and even when you take the bait sometime, that don't matter to God. God is still God. And he's like, that's okay.
I'm going to go get mine.
Yeah. She loves me. I love her. And I'm going to get her where I need her to be, one way or the other.
That's right.
And the way to make it like full circle is like, 2 weekends ago, I did an event for a client. And the caterer was actually the old social worker director.
Wow.
At that building that I got fired from.
Wow.
And so it's like we had the connection like that.
And they took a leap of faith then too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And now she's a celebrity chef. Yeah. So it's like the way that God works and the way God, like, he'll send you a reminder, like, I got you. Like, even that was another glimpse of God showing up and being like, I'm here. I'm present. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like you can't be an individual. Well, let me see how I'm saying this. But for you to really assess your individuality is to assess your relationship with God. I think those are harmonious, right? Where you were an individual, you're walking in your own morals and everything like that, but they're rooted in your relationship with God.
Yeah.
For sure.
You know, and with that, your community relationships will also be rooted in God because you're rooted in God.
Absolutely.
So it goes through almost like a funnel, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think they do go hand in hand. The way I kind of like think about it is like God's the manufacturer.
Absolutely.
You're the car. You have to go to the manufacturer to figure out everything about the individual car because they made it. They know what it can do. They know what it's capable of, how fast it can go, all that stuff. So you have to go back to the manufacturer to actually figure it out. You're still the car. You can still go on the road and drive by yourself and, you know,
Right.
try to figure it out on your own. But the person who has all the answers is the manufacturer.
Yeah.
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 I love that.
Still a part of a community of cars though.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right. This next segment of our show is called Questions from the Audience, where we go to our viewers, our audience, which is you, and we answer the questions that you've submitted under our comments. Submit your questions under our comments. So we have our executive producer today on the mic answering some of the, or announcing the questions that you guys have put in the comments.
Hi.
First question. Can a sense of community be fostered without the belief in a higher power?
One more time.
One more time. Can a sense of community be fostered without the belief in a higher power?
Yeah, we see that all the time.
Yeah.
We see white supremacists, they're a community. Like, I mean, we see communities all the time that don't have a sense of higher power. I would just say, try Jesus if you haven't already.
Hey.
So, I mean, yeah, the simple answer to that question. But I think it's more impactful, and, you know, God really calls us to be in community with each other. A lot of the 10 Commandments are based upon other people and how we treat others. And I think having a sense of a higher power, Jesus, creates a more positive community.
Yeah.
I agree. Because that kind of comes down to where we were talking about, like, compartmentalizing your friendships, right? Where you can have different areas of people in your life that you get and give different things. Like, you can bounce different things off of. But I feel like the most fruitful ones are the ones that you have a connection to God with.
Yeah.
You don't need God to have a community. That's not the foreground to have a community, right? But for the community that we're kind of relating to, it's kind of that fellowship. It's that group of people who you can bounce your ideas off of, or your situations in your life to get advice from, especially having people that you trust. Because I don't want to go to my friends who are out here partying and doing drugs. And, well, I don't have friends who do drugs. But for example, though, you don't necessarily want to get your advice from that group of people because they might lead you a different way that's more worldly. That's going to lead you to more destruction, more death, right? So having that group of friends who are rooted in the word as well. You don't have to have the identical faith, but if that's your foundation, you guys will round each other out.
I ain't got nothing to add to that.
All right. Another question. Right. Do you believe individuality can be seen as a threat to cohesion and unity of a community? One more time.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
repeat the question.
Do you believe individuality can be seen as a threat to cohesion and unity of a community?
I would say so, especially when you are very, what's the word I want to use? Very
Selfish.
aware of who you are, especially in Christ, because you develop a certain confidence. So you walk truly in your individuality. And that can seem like a threat to community sometimes, because especially leadership of communities, because they can see you as maybe trying to take their position or trying to change the rules or make things different because you're different. So yeah, I think it can be seen as a threat, especially when you're a very confident individual.
I agree with you if you change one word. I don't think it's confidence. I think it's arrogance, where it comes from, like where the source of your individuality is, and how you walk in that comfort of yourself. Um, because it's like when it comes to leadership, it's like if I'm doing this because it's me and I know that this is my own power, I'm going to walk differently rather than I understand that I am representing a group of people. So now I have the group of people in my heart that I'm leading with. So I think when your individuality becomes an ego of, oh, I am this person, rather than I know who I am and I'm going to be within this group of people too, I think that's where the balance gets thrown off.
I think that it can be seen as a threat, but I don't think that it should. I think individuality is great for collaboration. I think if we all have the same exact thoughts, if we all have the same exact way of doing things, that leaves no room for growth. So I think individuality, especially like with Loveway, we encourage that for people to be themselves, for us to meet you where you are, to learn about who you are, and to really be ourselves within that space. That's why, I talk so much about creating a safe space, because we want people to feel like they can come and be themselves. We have brunches. Do we have mimosa? Yeah. Do we have one? Maybe two? Yeah. But we really want to create a space for people to know that, like, you can be a believer, you can have a relationship with God, and you can still be who you are, and be amongst other people. And the thing about it is that if we get to the point where we forget that we are witnesses of God, and we don't want to be around other people because they're not like who we are, we lose a part of who it is, what it is that God has told us to do while we're here on this earth.
Yeah.
Which is to witness for Him, to glorify Him. Sometimes people come to Christ because they see God in you, So, yeah, it can be, but it should not be.
Last question. How can religious or spiritual leaders guide their communities to embrace both individuality and a sense of unity? So again, how can religious or spiritual leaders guide their communities to embrace both individuality and a sense of unity? So not just pastors, but it's deacons, deacons, pastor at camp.
I think by being raw. When I see somebody who's not trying to present this perfect image that I can actually relate to, of like, oh, they're actually struggling through that too, I can actually connect with them deeper and actually see myself through their story. And that helps me with my relationship too. And also to grasp onto like what the message is. I think a person who does that beautifully is Stephen Furtick, where he is not ashamed to be like, I be yelling at my kids. I have road rage, and I also have really negative thoughts that come at me throughout the week. And I'm not going to present to you like I have it all together, because I don't, because I'm human. And so he does it in a way where he's able to humanize himself. And that helps me also humanize my experience in receiving the word, because I'm not just trying to be this perfect person where now I feel bad because this image is in front of me and I don't even live up to it. It's like, oh, you're raw, you're being real, and you're being super organic, and I can relate to that. So I think that authenticity is what really shows individuality, and tying it in a way with the word as well.
Couple thoughts. So I'd say one, by not being judgmental. I think that we all have a sense of judgment, right? That's the human, the fleshly side of us. But I think like when we learn how to really be loving and to be gracious and merciful, I think that that helps us to really encourage other people, to not only just be themselves, but also to have a sense of community as leaders. I love this quote that a guest preacher said at our church once that I like carry with myself, and that's be careful of how you speak of other people's issues, because the only reason why you don't have that problem is because it's not your weakness. Like the devil doesn't tempt you where you're strong. You know, he's going to keep poking and poking and poking where you're weak. So if you're fostering these communities or these spaces that only allow certain individuals in, again, you know, you lose a sense of what God has called you to do while you're here, and which is to witness and to like glorify God. Like the light in you can help to light someone else's flame. And who are you to dim your light, you know, or the community's light, or that individual's light, you know, that could help someone else grow closer to Christ.
Speaking directly to leadership, which is what the question was asked. Okay. I'm just going to say, I think they can be more humble. Just remain humble. You can't do everything by yourself as a leader. You're going to fail very hard if you do. Embrace the individuality of those who are working alongside with you. Embrace them and provide a vision. Where there's no vision, the people perish. So as a leader, you should have a vision, and you should be figuring out how the individual gifts of these people fit into that vision, sharing that with them, and then allowing them to move with a level of autonomy to use their gifts, not dictating their gifts. They're not your gifts. Especially if you can't do what they do. You need to be a little more humble about how you're approaching them. So yeah, I'll say be humble and
Sit down.
Stop.
pretty much. Pretty much.
Well, that's it for questions. SOS.
Mm.
You want to intro it?
You got it.
I just
No,
did
joking. This segment of our podcast is called SOS, Subject on the Spot, where we give you 60 seconds to do a sermon about a topic. And this season, we're adding also a word that you have to use in
Connected
that
to.
sermon. So our producers and camera operators and social media coordinators are going to all help out with our topics and our words today.
Alrighty, who would like to go first?
Our guest would like to go first
Sure. I'll
in
go
the
first.
hot seat.
Be kind and loving,
Already have
a reflection of Jesus.
Okay, so your topic is train.
Is what?
Train.
Like choo
Train?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
TRAIN. Train. And your word is
Wait, like train like workout or choo-choo train?
choo.
choo-choo train.
Okay.
Or however you receive that, right? However you interpret it.
But
Okay.
I was thinking like
Choo-choo train.
Okay.
Okay.
Train and
Train
standard.
and
Your
standard.
topic is train. Your standard.
Ooh, you got standard on your shirt. Hey, come on.
Okay,
Mitch.
so train and standard. Okay, here we go.
Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so in life, there are different paths that we have to take. And much like a train, there are tracks, you know, that lead the way. And these tracks, you know, they separate, they go to different cities and different states, you know, but they all are intertwined and connected. And in our life, it's important to know that we can get to the same destination by going different directions. So we can get to Christ, even if we get off track and we go to a different destination, a different state, a different city, as long as we keep the standard, which is staying on track. So if we stay on track with God, stay in our word, and we continue to live out his word and keep that standard, we will get to heaven and see our Christ.
Come on. That was brilliant. Come on, guest. Ding, ding, ding. That was good.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
You want to go next or last?
You're like,
We'll go
"What's
next."
standard?" I was getting there.
All right, I'll go next.
So your topic is air vent.
Air vents, because it's
And your
freezing.
word
Sure.
is
3, 2.
Airflow.
What?
What?
Your topic is air vent. And
Okay.
your word is rain.
Rain. Air,
Rain and
vent?
airflow.
Air vent and rain.
Mm-hmm.
Air vent and rain.
It doesn't have to match.
Air vent and rain. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. Oh my gosh. Okay.
One.
Okay. So it's freezing in this room, right? So we're gonna go off this air vent vibe, right? So air condition, whether cold or heat in the winter, it's all gonna flow through this air vent, and that's the way that the Spirit flows through us. It might be a season of heat where it kind of will snap us back into place, or it might be a season of air conditioning where it needs to cool us down a little, where we need to step it back. We need to, come right back to things. But no matter what, we are inside, so we will be safe from whatever might come from outside, whether that's rain or tornado or other weatherly conditions that might serve as the temptations from the devil. As long as we are in the house of God, we will be safe and in a temperature that is healthy for us. Oh my God. I said the words though, right? Did the point get across?
Like it's still going.
It got across?
See, you got to turn into a Baptist preacher. When you run out of time, just go to the cross. Just start talking
Okay.
about Jesus on the cross.
You see, that was like, and you will get to see our Christ.
Just start preaching at the end.
I had to take it to the cross at the end of mine.
After I said lemons and I just because you have to talk.
I hate to
doesn't
expose
tie here.
He
preachers,
did.
but when preachers go to the cross at the end of their sermon, they just try to
Fill
fill
it
some
up.
time.
Okay. Woo.
Yeah.
That was hard.
Airflow, right?
All right.
They're never nice to me, so I don't even expect,
Yeah,
I don't even expect
make
them
them
to be
not match,
nice.
please. No matching. Nothing makes sense. No, you can't share.
Your topic is footprint.
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 Drought.
Drought.
All right.
Sometimes in life, no.
We always start with
Sometimes in your life, you find yourself walking in the midst of a drought, a situation where everything looks bleak and everything looks bad, and there's no rain, there's no water, you can't find anything to eat. That's figuratively, not actually. And you're just going through the situation and you're wondering, like, how long am I going to be in this situation? How long is it going to take before I come out of the other side? And you seem like you've been walking forever and you've been stuck in it forever, and you turn around to look on the ground and you don't even see the footprints from where you came, and you feel like you're stuck and you feel like you're going in circles. And but then you look off in the distance and you see a mirage and you're like, is that actually water or is that not? And you approach it and you come to find out that God has placed an oasis right in the middle of the desert for you. Sometimes it's a word, sometimes it's a person, but there's water in the middle of the desert. Amen.
Amen.
Because you can just say that's God.
Pretty much.
Ooh, that was hard. All right, season 3.
Yeah. I had nothing for that one. Absolutely nothing.
Right. All right.
Wow. Great episode. Good
Yes.
conversation.
Thanks for coming, Eb.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you guys for having me.
One more time, where can they find you?
Ooh, you can find me on Instagram at It's the Love Way, Instagram and Facebook at It's the Love Way, and also on the website www.itstheloveway.com.
Yeah.
Hey,
All right.
that's all we have for today, y'all.
Epi number 23.
Season 3, episode 3.
This episode is done.
Yes.
See y'all next time.
Bye.
Peace.
Thank you guys for watching Christ Culture the podcast. If this resonated with you, make sure to share it.
Yeah, go follow us on Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and leave some comments. We want to hear from you guys this season.
Definitely join in the conversation because we'd love to stay connected with y'all.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.
See ya.
Peace.